Happy to report that AOC is again a member in good standing of the DSA. AOC and DSA, synonymous. Apparently she had let her membership lapse, and she corrected that. DSA, happy to report, that AOC is a member in good standing, having recently rejoined in August 2026. She was always there in spirit, but she hadn't paid dues to her comrades. And, you're AOC and you're eyeing perhaps a presidential run to consummate the idiocracy that we're trending towards. You want to make sure you have your base in tow, the base of the party, which seems to me what the DSA has become, notwithstanding some non-DSA candidates running in key statewide elections. Speaking of the DSA, it's I think not just the fact that the DSA is Islamist adjacent, that members of the DSA are openly promoting violent overthrow of the government, that it is people are the DSA Zoom calls and its most popular streamer, Hasan Piker, are virulently anti-Semitic and profane. They're also quite limited intellectually. And I'm talking about Hasan Piker. Maybe this is why Michigan Representative Debbie Dingell says, I'm tired of talking about him.
I'm done. So don't any reporter ask me again about Hasan Piker. It's not what November is about.
Yeah, no. Yeah. Al Sayed's lifting partner there, Hasan Piker. She doesn't want to talk about Hasan Piker. All right, well, let me ask you about Hasan Piker, Representative Dingell, and other Democrats. This isn't about the topics that we're usually addressing, his mocking of Charlie Kirk's assassination, as I mentioned, the anti-Semitism, the general profanities, America deserved 9/11. When he tries to articulate an economic theory, an economic philosophy, for example, it goes a little something like this.
Wait, can we just play a thought experiment? Okay. Let's say that you make 15 loaves of bread, okay? You're making 15 loaves of bread. Then you hire someone, and that person also has the capacity to make bread, and together you guys start making 20 loaves of bread, and you're like, well, okay, I'm going to take 15 loaves of bread for myself and give this person 5 loaves of bread as a payment, okay? So now your output is 20 loaves of bread, and the other person is getting 5 loaves of bread while you're getting 15 still. Then another undocumented person comes in.
Illegal alien?
Yeah, illegal alien, sure. And all of a sudden, that person is working as well with your company. So let's say now, because of that, there's an additional person, now you can pay the other, the original employee 3 loaves of bread, because you can pay the undocumented person 2 loaves of bread, because the undocumented person doesn't have all of the rights that a legal citizen would have. Yeah. So you can justify paying them less. And then you can justify paying less to your original employee because there are plenty of people who could take their job, right? You're like, well, you know what? If you want to keep at least any loaves of bread and feed your family, you're going to have to take less money now, okay? Now, you look at that and you say, hold on, why don't we just eliminate the undocumented person and get 5 while the boss still gets 15 loaves of bread? Because I was getting 5 last year, and that was better than 3. And you're right, that is better. 5 loaves of bread is better than 3. However, what I advocate for is taking away from the boss 15 loaves of bread, helping him have 10 loaves of bread, and then taking the rest of the 10 loaves of bread and distributing it evenly amongst the other employees. So all of a sudden you have 7 or you have 8, and your new friend, who is the undocumented citizen who came in, has 7.
You follow that? I will give you all my loaves of bread if you stop talking about metaphorical loaves of bread. How's that sound? Can you just say from each according to his means, to each according to his needs, regardless of legal status? I mean, just one sentence. Wow. What a deep thinking, deep economic thought from Hasan Piker. And this is a guy who gets 1 million people to listen to him offer metaphors like that. Oh, frightening. Michael Baharaeen is editor-in-chief of The Long View. He's formerly at the Liberal Patriot. The Long View is a new outlet that includes his colleague, Rui Teixeira. Michael, thanks for joining us and appreciate it.
Hey, Dan, it's good to be back with you.
So would you like to opine on who should get how many loaves of bread? Or maybe we could just pull back and talk about the ascendancy of the DSA and what you think about its impact both on the Democrat Party and how its overt candidates will do in November.
Yeah. You know, I sort of share Congresswoman Dingell's sentiment that I'm sort of sick of talking about Hasan Piker. I think the problem is that this was many Democrats' own doing because they were looking for this way to, quote unquote, expand their big tent after losing to Trump in 2024. And this was their answer. They started bringing people like Piker into the coalition. He became kind of a favored guest, with the Pod Save America crew. And all of a sudden, people started, repelling against that and thinking this guy is not only not that smart, but has a lot of troubling views. And now I think Democrats are kind of regretting having brought him in the first place. But this is the bed that they laid. And so now we have to talk about it.
Right. And so, I mean, there's a long way to go between now and the first Tuesday after the first Monday in November. But control of the Senate realistically could come down to Michigan. And I think it's going to be hard for if Mike Rogers and the Senate Republicans run the campaign properly, I think it's going to be hard for him to separate himself from Piker and from the DSA platform and from some of his rather doctrinaire Islamist views because the electorate is going to be treated to relentless advertising of all of the above.
Yeah. Look, I mean, just putting my analyst hat on for a second, I would say that I think regardless of El Sayed's numerous problems, he is probably still a slight favorite to win in November purely because of the national environment. However, he is going to make this job as difficult as possible for himself. And I think, you've seen in the last week now, he's tried to distance himself from Piker. I think the problem is that there is kind of a months-long track record of embracing with him, of saying, I'm going to campaign with this guy despite everything that we know about him. And, one of the interesting nuggets from the primary election that he ran against Haley Stevens, which ended up being very, very close, was that the places where El Sayed underperformed and where he lost to Stevens were the counties in Michigan that were majority or heavily black and more working class. The places that he did very well in were college towns, wider, more affluent parts of the state. And the problem for him is that come November, those are not the places he needs to win. Those are not the kinds of voters he needs to win in order to win a state like Michigan, which is heavily working class, which has a large black population. So a lot of the things that he's doing seem to not be in service of that ultimate goal of trying to win a general election.
So, do you believe there is this schism within the Democratic Party between the DSA and non-DSA? Or is it really a DSA party and you have some people that for, their narrow political reasons are taking positions contrary to DSA orthodoxy, but will, fold into the DSA if they get elected? I mean, much like, frankly, El Sayed is trying to sort of reposition himself on issues, too. he's saying things that he may or may not necessarily believe in order to make himself palatable. You see people like Acton in Ohio running for governor doing the same thing. So is it a schism or is it a DSA party? And, people are going to have to pantomime reasonableness on some things in order to win in particular races.
It's a good question. I'm not ready to say just yet that this is the DSA's party. I think, the writer Matt Iglesias had an interesting two-part series recently where he talked about how, a lot of people confuse the establishment in the Democratic Party for the term moderate. And in fact, the establishment of the Democratic Party is quite progressive.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of them, even though I'm sure if you got them off the record, would be, admit that they are horrified by a lot of the things they hear the DSA say. Their primary objective is to win back power. And in their minds, the way to do that is to just take help from anybody with a D next to their name. And so if that's the DSA, well, you put up with, some of their worst excesses to get a seat here or there. And, the problem is that over time, and this has actually happened in both parties, but the Democrats have become a lot more ideologically homogenous. They've become much more liberal over time, and the part of their base that is moderate or conservative has been on a steady decline. And so you have a lot fewer guardrails or places where people can push back against an ascendant group like the DSA. And so, in the meantime, you've got candidates trying to run in places like Ohio and Iowa and Alaska, trying to flip the Senate for the Democrats. But the national conversation is being guided in large part by this ascendant left wing that includes the DSA, and it's going to make their job hard. It's not impossible that they could still win the Senate, but I think it makes it way harder than it otherwise could be.
And so does this come down to sort of which side is more effective? Are more effective hanging Trump around the necks of Republican candidates so long as his approval ratings are sub 40? Versus making all the Dem candidates DSA candidates and trying to make them box office poison. I mean, is that the basic gist of what we're going to see? And frankly, even though I know there's a lot of enthusiasm for Democrats, there's a huge resource advantage for Republicans that could be dispositive in close races as well.
It's true. Yeah. So being a midterm cycle, I think that is probably what you were going to see. You're going to see each side try to define their opponents by the least popular elements on that side. And I think, if you're Republicans, the hard thing is that the national wins just are, you're running into them. Mm-hmm. So, with Trump's approval rating and people still being frustrated about the economy and the war in Iran, I think that the Republicans have a higher mountain to climb if they are, hoping to win some of these swing races. Now, what I will say is you don't have to look that far back to see some exceptions to that. In the 2022 midterm cycle, Democrats nationally did not have a very good midterm. In a lot of states, there was a red wave. However, they were able in some of these swing states to portray their Republican opponents as too extreme, and they were able to win some of those races and hold on to some of those seats. And so I think there is a template that shows Republicans might be able to, in the case like Michigan, a little bit less so in Maine, though, Maine's Democratic nominee there is still quite progressive. In some of these places where if they can effectively portray the Democrats running in those races as extremists, these are still swing states at the end of the day. And so it's not a given that even in a favorable national environment, the Democrats are going to win those races.
Yeah. But on the House side, too, the gerrymandering that went on earlier this year gives Republicans a little bit more of a margin for error, or at least perhaps minimizing the damage than otherwise would be the case.
That is true. From the estimates I've seen, it looks like Democrats probably would have to win a national popular vote by about 4 or 5 points in order to flip the House. Last I saw, they were ahead by about 6 points in the generic, what we call the generic ballot, which is the question of which party people prefer to control Congress. So if my guess is, as of today, Democrats are going to flip the House. Now, how many seats and they have in their majority, I think is very much up for debate. Both parties now, after the kind of gerrymandering wars, have a lot higher floors. So there's a lot more seats that are kind of baked in, and it's shrunk the playing field of truly competitive seats. So Democrats could win the House, and they might only have a majority of about 10 to 15 seats. So it would be a lot smaller than the last time that they won back the House.
Michael Baharaeen, editor-in-chief of The Long View, formerly of the Liberal Patriot. Michael, thanks as always for joining us. Appreciate it.
Appreciate it, Dan. Thank you.
And he joined us on the alphawealthgroup.com answer line.
Before you see it on TV, share it on Facebook, or read about it in the paper. Hear it here first. This is Chicago's Morning Answer on AM 560. The Answer.
Hi, it's Amy Jacobson, and last year I hired Level 10 Coatings to give my garage floor a total makeover, and I am loving it.